Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this One World seminar on the mathematics of machine learning. It is my great pleasure to welcome Lucas Pillon-Vivien, I'm probably horribly mispronouncing that, to give a talk today. Lucas is a postdoc at EPFL, and he's going to speak about the role of stochasticity in learning algorithms. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stefan, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. And yeah, as you said, I'm going to talk about some results we had on the role of stochasticity in learning algorithms. So of course, if you have any question at any moment, I guess that you can interrupt me if you want. The more it is lively, the better, and the more interesting it is, I would say, I think. Okay. So introduction. So what is the machine learning setup I'm going to consider? So we have an observation. Okay, xi is going to be the input in RD and yi the output in R. And I'm going to look for prediction function parameterized by some parameter of Rp. That is going to be W in a very generic fashion. And the aim is like the general aim in supervised learning is to minimize the population risk. But I don't have access to the distribution of my observations, and I only have access to n observations, input, output, so xi, yi. And for this, I will minimize the empirical risk. Okay? And so from now on, I think that I'm not going to talk again about generalization, but I will only fix an observation and consider optimization problem. Okay. So example of parameter class are like super. I gave two examples: linear models, for example, where fw of x is just w scalar x, and in this setting p is equal to d. And for example, neural network where this is this concatenation of activation function and linear matrix times so this concatenation of linear system and activation function. Okay, and one thing that is going to be important is that I'm going to be in another parameterized setting where where d is much larger than n, where d is much larger than n, and where there will exist many w star that totally interpolate my input with my output. So I will often call this set of interpolating parameters the interpolating manifold, because often it's a manifold of dimension d minus n. And okay, this manifold is non-empty, and consider it as very big. Okay, so n is fixed from now on. And the aim of this talk is, generally speaking, to understand the difference between the role of the stochasticity in the learning algorithm. So I will dwell on two very well-known algorithms. First, GD, and then SGD, so the stochastic version of it. So just to recall in one slide, if I want to minimize the empirical risk, I can go for GD, where I consider the plain or full batch gradient descent on the empirical loss, or SGD, where I'm only considering here a mini batch of size 1, but I mean the analysis is the same for larger mini batches, but where I pick only a data sample uniformly at random, and I consider the gradient just for this partial loss. Okay, so the stochasticity comes here from the sampling of the dataset. Okay, and for me, generally speaking, I have, the general message I want to convey is, in the, let's say, convex case, for example, for linear parametrization, often the aim is to show that SGD is as good as GD can be, and stochasticity is viewed as a perturbation that does not hurt too much the convergence property of the of the algorithm. And I have this plot. So LW is equal to 0 is this interpolating manifold of parameters. And I have in mind in the strongly convex case or convex case that SGD is a little bit oscillating, but at the end of the day, it will converge to the same minimum of the training loss. Okay, so this is what I sketched here in this little sketch. On the contrary, in the non-convex case, I would argue that the setting is pretty different. Imagine, for example, that it's a neural net. Okay, then it's not clear that SGD and GD will converge to the same solution of the interpolating manifold if they converge. Okay, so in this setting, SGD and GD can give very different solutions, and stochasticity may help for generalization, for example. So the optimum retrieved by the at the end of the stochastic gradient descent may have better generalization properties than the one of GD. Okay, I want you to keep in mind that the trajectory can be very different because of the effect of the noise induced by the sampling. All right. So, and here is a bunch of experimental papers that draw our attention to the fact that SGD often outputs models which generalize better than GD. So you really have this sketch. You may have this sketch where SGD goes towards a better interpolator than GD. Okay, and we are trying to have a small toy problem where we can show this fact. Okay, this is really the aim of my talk today. Okay. So quantifying exactly the difference between the solutions in the interpolating manifold that my algorithm gets is what I'm going to call the implicit bias, because your algorithm is going to be implicitly biased towards a good or a different solution than another algorithm. So we can call it also the implicit regularization of some algorithm. Okay, so it's algorithm dependent. It's going to depend on, for example, the initialization, the step size, the noise you put inside. I mean, every training algorithm chooses a solution if it converges to a zero loss solution. It chooses a good or not good solution which may generalize well or not well. Okay, and my aim is to show that stochasticity plays a fundamental role in this selection. Okay, so how can I characterize how an algorithm can choose a solution? So, okay, let's say that I still want to minimize my empirical risk with GD or SGD. And I say that W alg infinity is the limit of my descent algorithm, whether it is SGD and GD. And assume that in both cases, the loss at W infinity alg is 0. That is, we have totally interpolated the data set. Okay. Then one way to characterize the difference between two different algorithms is to say among all the solutions that interpolate, my algorithm minimizes an implicit criterion that I'm going to call R. Okay, and that can be, for example, a norm, for example, the L2 norm or the L1 norm. Okay, and among all the solutions, I tend to be the one that minimizes an implicit criterion. Okay, so among all the interpolating solution here depicted here by this line, they are different in a way that they minimize, each one minimize an implicit criterion. Okay, and this is in stark contrast with explicit regularization, where during the training process, you explicitly want to regularize the criterion. Okay, this one is really intrinsically linked with the parameter of your algorithm, initialization, shape of your descent algorithm, etc. Okay. So okay. So to give a precise example where we can exactly specify this, let's consider the simplest problem ever for machine learning. I mean, the canonical one is least square. So I have a linear predictor, and I want to know in the over parameterized setting where do GD and SGD go. Okay. And both GD and SGD have a good property. I wrote here the two recursion explicitly, is that both share the property that they belong to an affine space of dimension n. Okay, that is W0, the initialization, plus the span of the data points, the input data points, x1 until xn. Okay, so both, I mean, they could live in RD, but instead they live in an affine space of dimension n. Okay, and you can show that as it stays in this affine space, then the only solution in this affine space that crosses the interpolating manifold, that is a linear space in this case, in this linear case, the only one is the projection for the L2 norm of the initialization. Okay, so in both cases, because we have this nice property in the linear case of belonging to W0 plus span x1 xn, then you know that SGD and GD will have the same implicit bias, and that the implicit bias is ruled by the fact that it's the projection of the initialization in the interpolating manifold for the L2 norm. Okay, so in this case, in a way, there is no difference at all between the implicit bias of SGD and GD. And as I said, going back to the second slide, it's kind of expected because we are in the convex setting. Okay. Okay. If you have questions, I will talk about more complex architecture right now. So if you have questions about what is the implicit bias, I mean, feel free to ask them now because it's going to be. In case of no question, I go further. Okay. So this was I tried to explain to you what is for me the implicit bias of an algorithm. Showed that in the least square setting, it has a deep relationship with the L2 norm because it's a projection, and SGD and GD do not have any differences at all. Okay, so I'm going to take an example, which I'm going to call the depth2 diagonal linear network of a non-convex dynamics, for which we may have a first glimpse of what can be a difference between SGD and GD. Okay, so what is my new architecture? In fact, it's a linear predictor, but instead of considering W scalar X, I split W into the product of two vectors, and my new parameter will be these concatenations of these two vectors. Okay, so even if my new predictor is linear in U times V, okay, now it's non-linear in W, that is the concatenation of U and V. Okay, and I'm going to consider my empirical risk, that is exactly the minimization over this coupled UV of the L2 loss. Okay.
Can I briefly interrupt you and ask what kind of product is that? Is that a tensor product between, like, is that a rank 1 matrix?
Yeah, sorry, I should have specified this. This is a coordinate-wise between vector products. So
okay, thank you.
The coordinates of W are UI, VI. Okay, so it breaks the linearity, and but you have no weird activation, and this can be viewed as a two-layer diagonal linear network because the neurons that are the coordinates in this system are only related to one another. Okay, and this is maybe the most simple example of non-linear system that we can tackle now. This is why it has been like investigated in this paper, for example, but there are a lot of paper. I'm sure that I'm forgetting some of them. Okay, so as I wanted to stress, now even if the predictor is linear, the dynamics is non-convex. Okay, and so that the training of gradient descent or stochastic gradient descent will be changed by this reparametrization. Okay, and as I will show, the implicit bias will have a great relationship with having a sparsifying effect. So what I want to show is like plot of what we can expect in this model. So I consider a model for which there exists a sparse predictor that I'm going to call beta L0 that have produced my data yi, and I train my diagonal linear net with this data set, and what I get is this plot. So this is really this can be viewed as the test error, really. This is not in function values. This is really how we recover. This is the L2 distance between the sparse predictor that has generated my data. Okay, and what we see is that GD is not very bad into recovering this sparse predictor, and that SGD is better. Okay, and we'll try to understand these plots. So it's really my interpolation manifold is like all the interpolation solutions, but among all these solutions, there is a sparse one because it has produced my data, and GD and SGD are not are quite good into recovering this sparse predictor, and SGD is better. Okay, and what I want to understand is really this difference. So the first thing is to understand the gradient descent case. All right. So to simplify, instead of having two parameters U and V, we can say that it's almost the same training dynamics, but I will replace it by W square. Okay. And when I put this square, it has to be understood coordinate-wise. Okay. So still, it's a nonlinear predictor in W, despite its linear in W square. And the training dynamics is, of course, non-convex because of this square. Okay, and still, my data set is fixed to n points, and I want to minimize my empirical risk. And first, I want to understand the gradient flow case before understanding what is implicit bias of SGD. I want to understand first GD. That will be simpler in a way because I don't have a noise model in this. And for this, I'm gonna use the infinitesimal step size approximation, and I will model this gradient descent by the gradient flow. Okay, that is really this ODE. That is really the gradient flow. So it's really the infinitesimal approximation of your gradient descent in case of step sizes going to 0. And I will initialize my dynamics at scale alpha. So I will take, but it's not a big deal, but to simplify the results, I will take the initialization to be alpha times the vector 1 of RD. All right. And in fact, this is a surprising result, but it's like a 5 lines computation. You can explicitly define an implicit bias for this procedure. And what is it? So you can say that despite the fact that the dynamic is non-convex, you interpolate the limit of this process. So the the linear predictor associated to W, that is the square of W, interpolate the dataset perfectly. Okay, so this first fact is non-trivial because it's a non-convex dynamics, and you can explicitly formulate a norm, a kind of norm. It's not exactly a norm; it's a semi-norm, but that depends on the initialization, and for which we can show that what is this norm R alpha that depends on the initialization. When alpha goes to plus infinity, it's like a L2 norm. And when alpha goes to 0, interestingly, it's a L1 norm. So it has some sparsifying effect. Okay? And I don't know if the audience is familiar to the NTK regime or the neural tangent kernel regime or the lazy regime. But this first result is not surprising because when the initialization is big enough, you know that your whole system is gonna behave as if it were linear. So it's kind of normal that we recover when the initialization is big, the L2 norm as in the least square case. Okay, but what is more surprising is the fact that when initialization is very small, then the implicit bias has an important sparsifying effect. And in fact, in the limit when the initialization is 0, what is the implicit bias? It's really a basis pursuit program. I mean, you really want to recover the sparsest predictor among all interpolators. Okay. The only problem with this result is the only thing that I did not tackle here is the convergence speed. I mean, at what rate does this dynamic converges? And in fact, one can show that when alpha goes to 0, so meaning that you have initialized at the origin at the point 0, then as 0 is the saddle points of your empirical, you can check that 0 is the saddle points of your empirical risk. Your dynamics is super slow. It will take a lot of time to go out this 0 region. Okay, so even if you have a super nice, if you desire some sparsifying effect of your predictor, even if you have a super nice sparsifying effect, then the optimization time can be arbitrarily long if alpha goes to 0. So there is always I guess this is a general thing to have this trade-off between optimization time and good statistical properties of your estimator. Okay, so this little model is in my opinion already quite rich. And we have good results on this. I mean, it's we can derive really this R alpha is in fact a function. I did not show this because it's a little of a mess, but it's related to some hyperbolic entropy. So it's a nice function that I could have derived. Okay. So this was the result for gradient descent, or gradient flow. Now, let's say that I consider the exact same architecture, but instead of optimizing with gradient descent, I will optimize with stochastic gradient descent. That is, I'm gonna put some noise because I subsample my loss and I consider only one mini batch each time I compute the gradient. Okay, and I will initialize at the exact same point, and my aim is really to compare the difference within the limit of my stochastic dynamics. So the first question, as we've seen in the least squares case, there is no difference in the implicit bias. So in this non-convex case, is there a difference? Okay. And the first thing that I observe empirically, so left, this is my training loss. Okay, and you see, so the black curve is the gradient descent, and the orange and blue curves are two paths of two different stochastic gradient descent. And what do I mean by two paths? It's because the sampling schedule is different. Okay, so the sampling is just different. So the path is different because I choose in SGD1 and SGD2 two different sampling scheme. I did not choose the exact same samples at the same moment. Okay, so what I have from this plot is that even though there is stochasticity, the training loss goes to 0. Okay, so it perfectly interpolates. So here it is a log scale, so this really goes to 0. And so from the previous result, we know that GD is pretty good if we initialize at some alpha. So here it's not an infinitesimal initialization, it's like O of 1 initialization. This is why it's pretty good, but still it's saturated at some point. But the stochastic gradient descent has a very interesting, there is a very interesting phenomenon, is that so as it interpolates, it stabilizes, and the limit of my linear predictor has always a better sparsifying effect than the one of GD. So this is the first thing that I can see from this experiment. And second, how well my limit behave is stochastic, because it's related to how I sampled my data inputs, my sample during my SGD. Okay, and I'm going to try to explain exactly this plot. Okay, so I will show that we will go to a zero loss point at the limit, and then that the implicit bias will be better than the implicit bias of GD, and will be stochastic. It will depend on the path of my sampling schedule. Okay. So for this, I will consider SGD. So I rewrite like plain SGD under this form because I want to rewrite it into the following form. I want to rewrite it into a stochastic, a plain gradient descent plus a noise that is due to sampling. This is why I rewrote it like the gradient, the plain gradient, plus some noise. And I want to put emphasis on the fact that this noise, okay, I did not put exactly what was Xi here because it's quite complicated, but this noise has some structure. Okay, the sampling noise from SGD has a super important structure. And for example, in this equation, you can see that I stress on the fact that it's in a manifold of dimension n because it belongs to like this manifold of diagonal of WT times X transpose that is of rank n times some noise in Rn. Okay, so I'm not going to dwell on it, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer later. But because it's quite complicated, but I want to like draw the attention of. I want to draw your attention towards the fact that modeling the noise of SGD is super important because the sampling noise of SGD is not nisotropic Gaussian. It's really like it has really a geometric structure that is super important, belonging to this diagonal times X transpose. And furthermore, it doesn't. I did not show up here, but it's important that it's lower bounded by the loss. So the noise of SGD is always 0 when the loss is 0. This is the reason why we converge. If not, we would like have an invariant distribution, like in for example, Ornstein-Uhlenbeck process or so. And what we did is that as the result before was for the gradient flow, and for the gradient descent, it's a bit more complicated. We model this stochastic gradient descent by a stochastic flow that is exactly this gradient flow plus the noise that has the structure that I discussed just before. Okay, and you have a bit to trust me with this structure, but I believe that this is the proper structure to model the sampling noise coming from SGD. And the only argument that I have more than this is that we've modeled SGD with this stochastic differential equation. And in blue, you have several realizations of this SDE. In orange, you have several realizations of SGD. And you see that with this metric, it seems to match. But this is only a model, okay? But we behave that it captures the key ingredients to understand the implicit bias of SGD, okay? And once again, if you have questions about this precise form, I'd be happy to answer, but it's quite technical. Okay. And what
can I briefly interrupt you here? There is this question. Can you give the intuition behind this SDE model?
Yeah, but this is what I mean. To write this model, I think that there is kind of a recipe because what you can do is write the SGD descent, okay, the stochastic gradient descent, the discrete time stochastic gradient descent, and then you can enforce the presence of the plane gradient. So you add and subtract the plane gradient, and then you have the gradient, the plane gradient. Here you have the plane gradient minus the subsample gradient, okay? And to model like this, you just have to compute the covariance of this difference between the plane gradient and the subsample gradient, okay? And the covariance has this form, okay? And the covariance, the span of I would say that and this covariance has some degenerate directions. This is why I say that this covariance is low rank, and it's important that the Brownian lives in n dimension, and that the noise is like X transpose times this Brownian. I don't know if I was clear, but I mean, to model this like this, you really need to have a deep look into the equations themselves and compute the covariance of the gradient minus the subsample gradient.
Thank you.
All right. So the dynamics is stochastic, and still we've tried to prove an analogous of the gradient flow case. Okay, so recall the result for the gradient flow, that the implicit bias, so that the flow interpolates at the limit, and that the implicit bias was governed by this function, and where when the initiation goes to 0, it was the L1 norm that rules the implicit bias. What we've been able to prove in a paper from last year is that despite the stochasticity, with high probability, the iterates converge to a zero training error. And at the limit, what is the solution? It's exactly the same function that pops up, but with the parameter alpha, which was previously the initialization, replaced by alpha times, and once again, this times is really coordinate-wise times the exponential of this guy. And to dwell a little bit more on this guy, what is this? So this is a step size. So basically, it's O of 1. There is the diagonal of the covariance of the empirical covariance matrix. Let's say it's O of 1. And the important term is the integral of the loss, okay? And the integral of the loss is itself stochastic because the path is stochastic. So here we see the effect that despite the fact that the flow converges to a limit, this limit is stochastic, okay? And it depends on the path it has taken. So in terms of flow, it really means that the law of beta t will converge to a Dirac into a stochastic vector. Okay, and this is due to this term here. Okay, and if I want to compare with the gradient flow, you see that this exponential, as this exponential is always -1, then it says that the implicit bias has an effective initialization that is always below the one of the gradient flow, meaning that the sparsifying effect, okay, is reinforced by the stochasticity. Okay, this is why I'm coming back to the plot. This is why we observe this. Okay, this difference is really because it's with the stochastic gradient descent, we have initialized the gradient flow with a smaller initialization. Okay. So this is like a systematic improvement of the stochastic gradient flow with respect to the gradient flow in terms of the sparsifying effect. Okay, so if you have questions, please interrupt me here, because I guess that it's quite heavy to understand the difference between the two setups.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah, so this you said this improvement comes from the stochasticity, right? But you explained that SGD has a specific structure of noise. So the structure, what kind of role is played by the structure of the noise? Just not just by the noise. Can you compare between just pure Brownian motion noise and SGD noise?
Yeah, this is exactly like you can see it in this model. For example, if this term wasn't here, so pure Brownian motion, so the noise term has just a covariance identity, then you wouldn't observe at all this. First, it will not converge to a Dirac distribution. It will converge to some uniformly span over Rn measure, and this is really because of the fact that there is a square root of the loss in front as the scale of the noise that you will converge to a Dirac. So, because you see that loss 0 point have like no noise at the limit.
So this improvement wouldn't be enjoyed if, like, also empirically as well, if it is just a pure Brownian motion.
Yeah, I would argue that empirically this is what we observe. We never see. If you have overfitted your dataset exactly at the end of training, then SGD does not converge to a stationary distribution. It's really a Dirac. I mean, it has converged. It doesn't move anymore.
I see.
And this is really because of this over-parameterized setting.
I see. Yeah, makes more sense. Thank you.
Okay. And this, the rest of the structure is more, I mean, it's more technical, I would say. An important fact is proportional to the loss itself.
Can I use this opportunity also? You said that initially that if you initialize with very small initialization, then the training takes a long time to get to the minimizer. Is that, do you have a comparison between how long it takes for GD or SGD to get close to that? Can you get a speed up from the fact that the initialization is effectively less so that you can choose larger initialization?
This is a very good question, and I don't have any result on this. And I mean, this is to have a real trade-off. You really want to compare this optimization time, and I don't know what is favorable, like to initialize lower GD or to have SGD a little bit above GD. I don't know.
Thank you.
Don't know, but this is an interesting question. Computing rate of convergence is way more difficult, I would say. What I can say about this is that SGD reduces the computational time because you select only one sample at each iteration. So in terms of computational time, it's sure that it's better. But in terms of optimization time, I don't know.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Okay, but maybe it's I don't know. Okay, so this was the result for this model, and then we just after this work we had some observation that imagine that the loss doesn't truly converge. Okay, so that the integral of this loss is plus infinity. Okay, then this exponential is almost zero, right? So alpha infinity would be zero, and then R alpha infinity would be exactly the L1 norm, and you would be ending solving the basis pursuit problem. Okay, trying to recover the sparsest estimator among all. Okay, so and how can I have this integral of the loss going to plus infinity? It's really if I'm not converging, it will be the case. And one thing that we can look at is inject at each step deliberately some noise. Okay, some noise of level delta, and like this, it's not going to converge anymore. And the intuition is that we will have this exact basis pursuit problem. Okay, and this is what we have done. Okay, imagine that at each iteration, you choose a sample and then you perturb it by some scale delta, for example. Then a proper model of the SDE is simply to change the loss by the level noise you've added deliberately to the dynamics. Okay, and as it is not proportional to the square root of the loss anymore, the noise, then it cannot converge. You will be sampling some distribution. And the question is, what is it? And is my intuition true in this case that we will solve a kind of basis pursuit problem? And what we have shown in this label noise model is that if you define the unique minimizer of the lasso problem, okay, with regularization parameter, your step size, and your noise level, then in the large noise regime, meaning in the large regularization limit of your lasso problem, your lasso minimizer will be uniformly zero. And in this case, these dynamics will converge almost surely to zero. Okay, so this is an almost sure convergence in this case. And in a small noise regime or standard noise regime, where this gamma delta is not overwhelming, then you can show that as beta star has some support, so it has some support where it has non-zero values, and outside of support it has zero value. So we have shown that outside of support, the iterates converges almost surely to zero, and on the support of the minimizer of the lasso, the law of beta t goes to some law that concentrates all its mass near the optimal predictor. So it's not so the law of beta t does not converge to a Dirac anymore, but it concentrates at the scale of the noise injected near beta star. Okay, so and this is a paper that will soon be submitted to arXiv, and so. And it shows that it does a pretty good job into recovering the sparsest predictor, and it gives like the fact that the previous intuition and the fact that if my loss is not converging, I would retrieve a lasso problem. I mean, this exactly gives the theorem of this intuition behind the previous theorem if it does not converge. Okay, and those are plots of this phenomenon where we consider the three models that I've discussed: the gradient descent in black, okay, the stochastic gradient descent in red, and the stochastic gradient descent with label noise in blue. And for example, if you want to see this plot on the right for the sparse recovery, you see that gradient descent does a pretty good job, but saturates. Then stochastic gradient descent does a better job, but saturates. And that with label noise, I mean, it only saturates at the noise level you've put in the dynamics. That is, I mean, it was below 10 to the minus 6 in this case. So this is why you see that the sparse recovery is almost, it's a delta close with delta properly. You can tune delta because this is you that injected the noise. So it's as close as you want from the sparsest predictor. Okay, so this is really to illustrate those 3 results that I've presented to you. And take-home messages to conclude. Yeah, I want to stress on the fact that considering appropriate stochastic gradient flows, like proper models of stochastic differential dynamics, can lead to interesting and pertinent results. Okay, those are only models, but if they model well your stochastic gradient descent, then they are, I mean, they are good. Like they can provide evidence of some behaviors. And for specific toy models, noise can bias the dynamics toward very different minimizer than the one of deterministic gradient flow. So stochasticity has really a role in the in the solution selection of your empirical risk. And one next, I mean, I'm sure that what is really interesting is more sophisticated architectures than this diagonal linear network. And I would say that before understanding truly the role of stochasticity, one has always to understand the gradient flow that is already an important problem for nonlinear dynamics. And with this, I thank you for your time.